approve a bill that gives all of that money. Of course, we would never approve an amount like that. And they also want $25 billion additional for the post office, Steve. $25 billion for the post office, so the post office can handle this vast amount of ballots that are being sent at random all over the place. They have no idea where they're going. So they want $25 billion for the post office. They want $3.5 billion for universal mailing, $3.5 billion. And the bill's not going to happen because they don't even want to talk about it, because we can't give them the kind of ridiculous things that they want that have nothing to do with the China virus. It has nothing at all to do with China virus, much of what they're asking for. So therefore, they don't have the money to do the universal mail-in voting. So therefore, they can't do it, I guess, right? Are they going to do it even though they don't have the money? They're asking for the three.
Donald Trump is connecting, in this moment, right here, the destruction of the post office to the ballots. Now, Trump crony DeJoy gets in as Postmaster General, and what does he do? He dismantles the post office. Now, the fact that this man has basically competing investments in other companies that are competing with the post office, and this destruction of the post office, this almost privatization of it, this predatory, just outright destruction and attack on our one of America's favorite institutions, is astonishing to watch. I mean, one of the judges has just basically restrained him from doing such, citing it as electoral interference. But here's the catch. Right here, Donald Trump is making the connection to the functioning of the post office and the money that the post office needs in order to get from point A to point B after being undermined by Democratic and Republican congressmen and bipartisan legislation that basically undermine the post office and functioning of that institution. It's a service, and like any other public service, you pay for it. It's a service that we value, and as such, we should pay for that public service. But here's the catch. Donald Trump is making a very basic point here, honestly, shamelessly. We're not going to give the post office that money because we don't want the post office to be able to function in the way it needs to function to get the ballots out to the people it needs to get the ballots out to. He has been attacking the ballot process constantly and has been steeping this notion that there's something nefarious here and getting ballots out to the public and to the citizenry. What he's saying here is nonsense. The ballot thing is relatively safe. In fact, the issue is the opposite, that basically a lot of ballots gets thrown out. Not so much that ballots don't necessarily know where they're going, more so the legalities of getting your ballot to the place where they can accept that ballot in a way that is straightforward without them saying, okay, we're going to get rid of that ballot because that ballot has something wrong. There's a market in the wrong place. It's not stuffed in an envelope in the right particular way. It's that stuff. That's more of an issue. Now, what Trump's saying, though, is something opposite. Trump is talking about voter fraud, and that's not a real thing per se. Yes, it exists, but not in the way the Republicans are talking about. You're talking about like point something percent, where they're acting as if it's a boogeyman around every corner. Here's the other part to this. Donald Trump, how are you going to stay in office? How are you going to stay in office? If the polling is right, you may be upticking here or there, but ultimately you're still looking far behind. I understand it said about Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton did not have, 200,000 people dead from a virus that you flagrantly mishandled. On top of that, she didn't have 30 million people out of a job, and she also didn't have millions of people being evicted from their homes. With your interests not being those people, your interests being more so, basically, the people you gave those tax cuts to. And even when it came down to getting people money and cash and everything else, the best that you could do is $1,200, while again, giving massive amounts of money to your cronies and to your friends. So this doesn't necessarily look all that good for you. There are fires burning down the west part of the United States, and there are floods taking down the other. Basically, you were handed a country and you set the shit on fire. And you're now running an election. And even though the overwhelming majority of people who are voting for Joe Biden are doing so just to get rid of you, that's still them voting to get rid of you. Even if the percentages are off, are they magnificently wrong? I don't know. And I suppose you don't know either. So the question becomes, how do you, Donald Trump, plan to stay in office? And that gets to something extremely interesting. Because Donald Trump has what I think he considers a failsafe to stay in office. And he is going to give a shout out to one dead RBG for that failsafe to be in play by election time. Welcome to the Soapbox. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. If you guys dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I saw this video. I can't hold this one long, but I saw this clip, and I thought, that's how he's going to stay in office. Or at the very least, he's thinking, worse come to worse. And all of these things are related. RBG's passing, the attacks on the Postal Service, and Donald Trump himself, who's going to spill the beans. Listen to this. The Supreme Court. Now, I've said before that more prayers have gone up to keep Ruth Bader Ginsburg alive than I think any God has ever received. And she has battled on. She's fought hard against cancer, against reality and odds themselves. And she's passed. She's a person. Now, all notion that the Supreme Court is fair, all notion that the Supreme Court is impartial, has been ripped away all at once. Because it was never those things. Maybe at some point it was, but it has become a partisan institution every bit as much as the political instrument, which is why people fight so hard for the Supreme Court. Now, the catch here is the Democrats are going to lose this fight. Donald Trump is going to put in their person, and they're going to rule the day that Obama was so cool and casual about not getting Merrick Garland in it. Milquetoast Merrick Garland, you didn't fight. You should have fought like hell to get him in. But again, too cool for school Obama. And in being too cool for school, you lose your pick. They keep you from your pick. Being very, very politically astute and even making the argument, hey, we're going to let the Supreme Court die on the vine. Think about that. Maybe we don't need another Supreme Court pick. Hey, maybe that institution doesn't need to function, per se. And then they win, and it's like, all right, yeah, let's get this done. Well, Trump's going to get his pick. The power of the president doesn't stop just because you're going into the election. And the power of that president is to get a pick. And when they get that pick, the Republicans are going to put that pick in because that's what they're going to do. That's their job. If the Democrats was doing their job, they would have gotten Merrick Garland in. But they weren't doing their job. They were being lazy. I think part and parcel to the problem here is that you have two sides of a political spectrum in the same party. You have one side that is more, let's say, for the rich, basically the dollars of the party. And you have another side that's the pitchforks. And the pitchforks, for the most part, have been complicit. I mean, look at them. They're laying down right now. For Joe Biden, just press it. Ass up. Face down. Instantaneously. And that's basically how they've been for God knows how long. The saddest part about ass up, face down for this particular electoral cycle for the left, you know, the TYTs of the world, the Cedars of the world, the Sanders of the world, the AOCs, that basically say, look, the issue here is not to get Biden to represent us. The issue is for us to prostrate ourselves and dress up. That's what our job is. I'm saying that's a ludicrous proposition if your job is to get policy accomplished. It is the opposite of politics. If you have 30 million people that say we want X, and you have a party that is supposed to represent that 30 million people, and that party says, kick rocks to those 30 million, that 30 million should not say, okay, we'll love you anyway. That 30 million should say, you get our vote when you represent our interests. And if you don't want to represent our interests, you're going to lose. Our interests just so happens to be the interests in the majority of your party and the larger public. So the elements of the party at that point who agree with us should say, hey, those guys are right, and you're going to lose if you don't back them. In which case we say, yeah, you're right, you're going to lose if you don't back us. And the elements that are inside the Democratic Party and the elements that are not in the Democratic Party that say represent our interests, at that point vibrate together. And the party has to make a choice. The public is stating a clear demand. Do we accept that demand or not? Now, if your party that is supposed to represent your interests, and you have an element in the party and an element outside the party saying, represent us or lose, and your party tells you to kick rocks, what does that mean about whether or not you ever had representation in your party in the first place? What does it mean for representative democracy in and of itself to not have representation for the public in clear terms? I hope you understand what I mean. This is a referendum of sorts. If you have a huge amount of the public, even elements of your party, saying this is what we want and you're going to lose if we don't get it, and the Democratic Party makes the choice to tank it to a man who they call the apocalypse, to a man who they consider to be the end of all things, they are basically telling the public, we are not going to appropriate a policy that you're screaming for, that is in the midst of a pandemic. We're not going to do that. We're not going to take Medicare for all. We're not going to do that. We're going to tank it, as opposed to appropriating policy that the public has clearly demanded that they want it. That's what that means. That's sad that the public or that the party doesn't do that. Instead, what's going to happen, what may happen, is you may have a lot of people giving mail-in votes. You may have a lot of people sending these things off in the mail. You may have a lot of people going to the polling and everything else. If you have a large contingent of people who decide they don't necessarily want to go to the elections because they're freaked out and they decide to send in mail, that may sound great because often the larger people who go to the polls, meaning the more people who go and vote, the better the chance for Democrats to win. The less number of people who go and vote, the better chance for Republicans to win. Well, if you conceptually think about, well, if you have more voting by mail, well, that's easier to vote, so you have more people to vote. That's also more ballots that get tossed out, or they get challenged in court. And that's the catch. If they are indeed challenged in court, and Donald Trump has been attacking the post office, especially attacking this notion of the mail-in ballots, and DeJoy has been unraveling it, the post office. And regardless of what the judge says, are they indeed going to be able to put the infrastructure back in time for them to get the ballots through, et cetera, et cetera? Not to mention, they may do something at the last minute in order to hinder that process. It may take days for those ballots to get back in time. It may take months for them to count those ballots. And what is going to happen in an intervening time as the election gets called? And whether or not that election gets called at all, and if it drags on. I guess I'm making the point that you're going to have something that most likely gets challenged in court. And if it gets challenged in court, where is it going to go? Is the Supreme Court going to immediately snap that up? And who's going to be on that court? And the person who Trump is going to put on the court will be a woman. And he should have, hopefully, a woman of color. And she will be hard right as hard right can be. And they will say, how dare you attack this woman of color? She's there. She's a stalwart person in our justice of the Supreme Court, representing the right. Again, the issue is class. The issue is not identity. But I love the fact, and I hope that that's what's used in order to choose this particular person. And she will get confirmed. She should get confirmed, just like I believe Merrick Garland should have been confirmed. And then, when this case, which inevitably will get litigated and will get bubbled up to the Supreme Court, what do you think is going to happen? This is what Trump thinks.
Oh, I don't think so. We need 9 justices. You need that. With the unsolicited millions of ballots that they're sending, it's a scam. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. And the Democrats know it better than anybody else. So you're going to need 9 justices up there. I think it's going to be very important because what they're doing is a hoax with the ballots. They're sending out tens of millions of ballots, unsolicited, not where they're being asked, but unsolicited. And that's a hoax. And you're going to need to have 9 justices. So doing it before the election would be a very good thing because you're going to probably see it. Because what they're doing is trying to sow confusion and everything else. And, you know, when they talk about Russia, China, and all these others, they will be able to do something here because paper ballots are very simple. Whether they counterfeit them, forge them, do whatever.
Very straightforward. We need 9 justices. We need 9. We need 9. We need 9. 9. Fucking 9. That's what we need. Why do we need 9, Trump? Because this is going to go to the Supreme Court. What's going to go to the Supreme Court? These ballots, man. These ballots. This shit is rigged. It's rigged. Can't trust it. Can't trust it. They go anywhere. And so that's going to be litigated. And when it gets litigated, we need 9. Can't have 8. We need 9. And I, as President of the United States, will not allow division to be sown by those Democrats who are screaming about Russia and China and all this other nonsense. So I am going to do America's work, and I'm going to put in that 9th fair, impartial, non-biased, female, woman of color justice, Donald Trump. That's what I'm going to do. And she is going to ensure that my ass stays in office. Now, is she going to recuse herself? Probably not. Is Brett Kavanaugh going to recuse himself? Probably not. But neither was Sotomayor, who was under Obama. They're going to go out and they're going to snatch up this case, whatever this case is that Donald Trump comes up with, and they're going to say, Donald Trump wins. We're going to invalidate all of this other stuff. He wins. Fair, impartial. But just like the George Bush one, you can only use it for this very specific instance, not anything later. That's his fail-safe. I think he's thinking, look, he might have thought to himself, I can put in my person. And with a wink and a nod, that person knows what that person is supposed to do. Just like Kavanaugh knows what that person is supposed to do. And everybody else who's there knows what they're supposed to do. And they're going to snatch their case up. And they're going to say, we don't like those other cases. We like this. And whatever they come up with, Trump will win. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. But would you prefer to have that as a arrow in your quiver? Yes. Yes. If your name is Donald Trump. What does that mean for the rest of the country? Helter skelter. Think about what that means. This is an interregnum like nobody's business, and that's something that I think we've seen in modern America. You basically will have a president and a vice president fighting it out to figure out who's going to rule the country. And they're going to be using all sorts of litigious weapons at their disposal. In the meantime, what happens for the country and how long does it go on? And if that hits January, what happens? Does Trump stay in office, especially if these guys are still fighting it out in court? And for that matter, what happens if the Supreme Court does what Trump may be insinuating that they're going to do? What does Biden do? Does the Democratic Party accept it? Now, even if Biden accepts it, does the rest of the party accept it? And let's say the roles are reversed, for example. I mean, we're talking about a president that doesn't sound like he's necessarily going to accept the results of something that he's going to continue to call a scam and everything else. And how many other people that were going to go out and support him. Let's say there's a percentage that get extremely angry and believe exactly what he's saying, that that election was a scam, despite the fact that Biden might actually win it. look, I don't have good feelings about what's coming up in November. I've been to, and my wife and I went to Kenya. I think it was like a few years ago. And one of the things they said, we don't like elections here. We don't like elections because the elections are always contested. Neither side accepts the results of the particular election. And because they don't accept it, it ends up being conflict, either from the standpoint of their supporters or from the standpoint of their campaigns themselves. Look, I don't know what that looks like in America, meaning an American version of that. But the way it's looking, it looks like we're going to have a litigious election cycle. And whether that litigious election cycle gets a little bit more violent from the standpoint of the supporters or not, both camps are riled up. And riled up in a way that is targeted specifically at the electoral system itself. Buckle up. Yeah, buckle up. Let's see. We have 2 chats, and I have to leave. Come on, where is it? Bernie or guillotine. The post office argument is controlled narrative to distract you from not realizing in 2020 my phone is secure enough to bank but not to vote. Come on. No, I mean, oh, you mean to vote online. Ugh. I mean, banks get hit. I don't know. I think the issue here is that people want to make sure that their vote is secure. And I think the issue becomes, do you know that when you're putting it in a digital system? People are talking about voting systems being rigged when you are going literally into a booth in order to put your vote in. Would those people necessarily believe entirely in a voting system that is entirely digital? I think you have problems with believability. Yes, you can do your banking. I understand that. You have an idea of how much money you're putting into your bank account. You have no idea what's going into something that is not your bank account that you have specific knowledge of. So no, I don't buy the argument that, yes, voting is entirely legit and have a believability factor, that the system is not being rigged or gamed with online. I don't buy that. I do think, look, I would have qualms. I used to do software engineering. I would have qualms with just putting my vote into a system that was a black vault. You have no idea what that system is, who's controlling that system, how it's being. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that one. Bob Ramirez, come on, son. Do you really want Biden this much? Who, me? No, I don't want Biden this much at all. What I am saying, though, is from just a political analyst standpoint, he's being very clear on what he's saying. The court, my last refuge. No, Trump's going to put his pick in. He should put his pick in. It's exactly what Biden would do if he had the opportunity to put his pick in. It's exactly what Obama you would think, would try to do if he had the opportunity. So no, it's not a rah-rah Biden. I don't have a dog in this hunt at all at this point, Bob. All right. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all. I will see you later.